This is a tabbed interface. Though not native to the web, tabs are a popular design choice for toggling content visibility. But in the absence of a native tab element, which elements should you use instead? How can I optimize this component for screen readers? And what happens in the absence of JavaScript? To find out, I turn to the ARIA Authoring Practices Guide and web dev expert Hayden Pickering. Their expertise shed light on the essential ARIA attributes and progressive enhancements needed to make this project inclusive. So stick around as I show you what it takes to build a progressively enhanced tabbed interface. It's always a good idea to begin with semantic HTML and add enhancements as necessary. This approach ensures that in the absence of JavaScript, the content remains meaningful to assistive technology users. To learn more about how to incorporate progressive enhancements into your projects, check out Hayden Pickering's book, Inclusive Components. I learned a lot from it while researching this project, and can't recommend it enough. Links in the description. So I'll start with an unordered list of links, each pointing to its related content further down the page. Each link also gets a class and an ID. I've added the ARIA labeled by attribute to the list and referenced the ID of the heading above. Associating the list with the heading gives context to screen readers about what's in the list. I've used section elements for the tab panels and added a class to each one. Again, I've added the ARIA labeled by attribute to associate each panel with its corresponding tab. Each panel holds the content. With this basic structure, I've ensured that the content will make sense to screen reader users, with or without JavaScript. To get a better understanding of how this sounds on a screen reader, let's listen to the NVDA software read out the list of links and sections so far.
All the characters you know and love list with 4 items: Kayla visited link, Tino visited link, Farley visited link, Sam visited link. Out of list Sam region heading level 2 Sam's dance moves visited link, Elegendi qui incident link.
Notice how the heading is announced when I tab into the list. This is because of the ARIA labeled by attribute on the list. As expected, each link is announced as link, and each section is announced as region. For example, Kayla region, Tino region, and so on. Again, this is because of the ARIA labeled by attribute on each section. Now that the basic structure is in place, let's continue with making enhancements using JavaScript and ARIA attributes. The ARIA Authoring Practices Guide, or APG, provides a list of recommendations for accessibility features and keyboard support when building tabbed interfaces. Check the description for links to their website. First, I'll grab the tab list, tabs, and tab panels from the DOM. The first recommendation from the ARIA APG is to communicate to screen readers that this is a tabbed list. First, I'll set the role of the UL element to tab list. Then I'll set the role for each anchor element to tab. When the screen reader comes across the list of links, it will read out tab control and tab 1 of 4. Since semantically we no longer have an unordered list, I'll change the role of the list elements to presentation. Let's listen to what we have so far. Take note of the roles now announced by the screen reader.
All the characters you know and love tab control. Kayla tab selected 1 of 4. Tino tab selected 2 of 4. Farley tab selected 3 of 4. Sam tab selected 4 of 4. Kayla region Kayla's powers visited link.
This is sounding great. Let's continue. Another APG recommendation is to ensure the first tab is selected on page load. To do this, I'll set its ARIA selected attribute to true and set all other tabs to false. Later, I'll toggle this value to indicate to screen readers which tab is selected. The ARIA APG also recommends that only the first tab be accessible via the tab key. All other tabs should be accessible using the left and right arrow keys. For now, let's remove all the tabs from tab order by setting their tab index to -1. We'll leave the first tab in the tab sequence by removing the tab index attribute. I'll use a similar process for the tab panels. First, I'll change the role of each section to tab panel. The APG recommends including all tab panels in the tab order. To do this, I'll set the tab index on each to 0. Each panel, except the first, will be hidden using the hidden attribute. Later on, I'll toggle this value along with the ARIA selected attribute on the tab. but more on that in a bit. So let's see what we have so far. In the accessibility tree, the first tab is shown as selected, and its associated panel is the only one visible and accessible via the tab key. The screen reader will announce the selected tab as selected tab 1 of 4. As a user continues to hit tab, they'll enter into the panel content. At the end of the panel, the tab order resumes to the next focusable item. Let's take a listen.
All the characters you know and love tab control. Kayla tab selected 1 of 4. Kayla property page Kayla heading level 2 lorem ipsum dolo. Kayla's powers visited link. Elegendi qui incident link. Unlock epic gear list with 4 items backpack visited link. Sneakers visited link. Headphones visited link. Pets visited link.
For comparison, I added a list of links at the bottom of the page that have their default roles and semantics. Rewind the video to listen to the differences between these two sections. Now let's set up keyboard navigation and give some functionality to these tabs. There are 3 basic key presses we want to listen for: the left arrow, the right arrow, and the tab key. On each key press, a function will fire that will select the tab the user is aiming for. I'll set up a function called getKey, which will take in the event object as the parameter. For the arrow left key, the select previous tab function will fire, sending the event target as its argument. Similarly, the arrow right key will fire the select next tab function, again sending the event target with it. Finally, the tab key will fire the select tab function, sending the event target with it. First, I'll create the select tab function. It will take in the target as a parameter, which is just the key from the user's key press. I'll cycle through the tabs and get the tab ID and its associated panel. Here, I'm using a template literal to dynamically select the desired tab panel. Then, if the current tab matches the one the user selected, the tab will receive focus, have its ARIA attribute set to true, and be placed back in the regular tab order. I'll also remove the hidden attribute from the associated tab panel. If the current tab is not the one the user selected, then its ARIA selected attribute gets set to false, the tab gets removed from tab order, and its associated tab panel is hidden. I'll add an event listener to all the tabs, so that when the user clicks, the select tab function gets fired. Remember to send the event target with the function call. I'll also use the prevent default method to stop the browser from reloading. I'll add another event listener for when the user presses a key. For this, I'll fire the getKey function. Great! Now when I click through the list, you can see the content changing. Tabbing through the page is also beginning to take shape. And if I inspect the Accessibility tab, I can see that every element is being labeled properly. For the right arrow key press, I'll set up a function called selectNextTab. Again, the function will take in the target, which is just the tab the user selected. Then I'll set the last tab constant to the last item in the tab array. I'll also initialize the index variable. If the tab they selected exactly matches the last tab in the array, I will send the first tab as the target of the select tab function. This will ensure that once the user reaches the end of the tab list, their next right arrow key press brings them to the first tab in the list. Otherwise, I'll set the index variable to the index of the tab the user selected. Then choose the next tab in the array and make it the target of the select tab function. The function for the left arrow key press is exactly the same, except using the first tab. So in the select previous tab function, I'll set the first tab constant to the first item in the array and initialize the index variable. If the selected tab exactly matches the first tab in the array, I'll send the last tab as a target of the select tab function. This will ensure that once the user reaches the beginning of the tab list, their next left arrow key press cycles them back to the end. Otherwise, I'll set the index variable to the index of the tab the user selected. Then choose the previous tab in the array and make it the target of the select tab function. Now, pressing the left and right arrow keys moves me through the tabs as expected, and pressing the tab key puts me into the tab panel. This is making some good progress, But now let's finally get to some CSS. I'll start in the mobile view. For the styling, I'll use the attribute selector to ensure that my fallback will always visually look like a list of links. First, I'll remove the default styles from any ULs with the role of tab list. Next, I'll select all LI elements with the role of presentation and give them a border, making sure to remove the bottom. I'll select the list item that contains the link whose ARIA selected attribute is set to true, and set its background to the accent color. Any nested anchor tag will get a text color of white. Next, I'll select the anchor tags with the role of tab and add some padding. I'll also change their display to block so that the user can switch the tab by clicking anywhere within the box. Finally, I'll give a border to all the elements with the role of tab panel. This mobile view is looking great. Now, let's make some final tweaks for larger views. Inside a media query, I'll select all the ULs with the tab list role and switch their display to flex. This lays out the tabs in a horizontal row. I'll also change their background to make them appear behind the focus tab. Finally, I'll remove the border from any list item with the role of presentation. And there you have it, a tabbed interface enhanced step by step. Building with inclusion in mind ensures that your projects provide a meaningful experience to as many people as possible. Hey everyone, thanks for watching and be sure to subscribe for more CSS builds. Until next time, happy coding!